Today we're tracking how abortion rights and young voters are shaping the 2024 race, because today does mark 2 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and Vice President Kamala Harris campaigning on the issue today. Later this hour, we'll check in on her event. According to a new CBS News poll, a majority of Americans think abortion should be legal. Our polling also shows 61% of voters under the age of 30 support President Biden. But will this key voting bloc turn out? That's why we're turning to Caitlin Huey-Burns and Anthony Salvanto, our friend who joins us now. Caitlin is CBS News political correspondent. Anthony is CBS News' executive director of elections and surveys. Anthony, let's begin with you. You're at the board. What are young voters saying?
Hey, Bob. Look, we want to look at everybody, but we want to start with young voters as a key group, because take a look at this. In addition to those issues you raised, they think it's harder for them now than it was for previous generations to do things like buy a home, raise a family, get a good job. That sets the context not only for how they look at this election, but also how they look at the economy. And then there's this. They also think that they're going to inherit a world where the environment is worse and where there's fewer opportunities and a lot more danger. So all of that sets the context. But then the question is, and this will lead into what we're talking about today, what do they do about it? Well, they think there's a lot of things they can do. They can be active in a lot of areas, but voting is not necessarily always one of them. Look at that. 2/3 say they'll definitely vote. And you compare that to those over age 65, where almost all of them say they're going to vote. And that puts a cap, frankly, on some of those numbers you showed for the Biden vote earlier, where if people don't turn out, then their impact there becomes limited by definition, Bob.
Stick with us, Anthony. So those are the numbers, at least some of them. What about the voices, Caitlin? You've heard from many young voters over the course of recent weeks.
Yeah, we spent some time in Arizona, a key battleground state, talking to voters under 30 about this election. As Anthony notes in his polling, we found that on the ground in Arizona as well. This kind of, feeling of the difficulty of getting ahead, especially in this economy. And that's what's notable, is that we saw in our polling, and also translated into our reporting on the ground, was that the economy was top of mind for voters, whether they were supporting Trump, whether they were supporting Biden, or wanting to sit it out altogether. Listen to a little bit of what we heard from voters.
Are you going to vote?
I'm on the fence about that right now, just because I'm not happy about my options. But I do understand that if I don't vote, then it's probably a vote for Trump.
Well, you have to give us something to vote for. I think that's why a lot of people are choosing to, sit this one out, is because at the end of the day, we are the future.
So we heard from young voters what we're hearing from a lot of voters across the country, which is that they are disappointed in their choices and not really feeling, at least at this point in their lives, like voting in a national election can really change things. A few voters that we talked to, young voters, were actually saying that they felt like local politics affected their lives more intimately than national politics.
Anthony, what does our polling show about who these people are going to support if they do show up at the polls?
Well, let me pick up on that, because one of the reasons that people connect or don't connect with a campaign is the candidates, right? Well, take a look at this. Is candidate age a factor in your vote? And for a majority of them, both Biden's age and Trump's age is. Why does that matter? Because they don't necessarily think that that will allow the candidates to understand the needs and concerns of young people. And I'll add this. Even if people aren't satisfied with their choices, when they're older, they vote anyway. But for young people, we can empirically see that when they're dissatisfied, they're less likely to turn out. And that's one of the reasons why, Bob.
What about the issue of Gaza, Anthony?
Yeah, that's been a key thing. We've talked about that a lot during the run-up. You saw the college protests, et cetera. There's two things here. One is that younger people are the most likely to say that Joe Biden should call on Israel to stop its military actions in Gaza. So there's a definite difference there between them and older folks. But having said that, these other issues like abortion that you mentioned, like the economy, like climate change, all of those matter a lot, too. And right now, those are driving that vote toward Joe Biden, Bob.
And building off of that, Caitlin, what did you hear from young people about Gaza and how that's affecting their vote? The young man you spoke with, was it a factor in his vote or not?
It was interesting. I mean, one person that we spoke to who was actually going to or wanting to support RFK Jr. said that that was a factor in his vote. He said that he told us Biden was doing a good job, but that his handling of the Israel-Hamas war was a non-starter for him. So that led him away from Biden and towards someone like RFK Jr. We'll see if he's on the ballot in where he lives. But Anthony picks up on a really interesting point, too, which is this question of this voter engagement on these issues, economy, but also abortion rights, climate change, race and diversity. And what was interesting about Anthony's polling is that these campaigns have a lot of work to do in terms of convincing voters to turn out for them on those issues. Even if they were supportive of those issues, there were questions about whether Biden had done enough on abortion and other kinds of issues. And it's also interesting that Anthony's polling found among those who voted in 2020, because young voters were such a key part of Biden's coalition, only a third of them say that they are planning to vote this time around. So a lot of work to do for these candidates.
And Anthony, what about the Trump campaign? The Biden side, every time I'm talking to my sources there, they say they want to frame Trump as a threat to democracy, a threat to abortion rights, a threat to the future for young people. They say the Biden administration has done so much on student loans, the economy, other issues. So how do young people, based on our polling, actually see Trump?
Well, you start with this. I'll pick up on the abortion point where, yeah, if abortion's a major factor, they're voting for Joe Biden. Having said that, there's a substantial portion of them that aren't sure they know what either candidate would do, what Joe Biden would do, what Donald Trump would do on abortion, to Caitlin's point about messaging. But the point with Trump is the same, frankly, among all age groups, which is the economy. Donald Trump does better among people, including young people, who prioritize the economy than over other issues like this. So that speaks across generations, right? What is this campaign about? What issues is it about? And that is one way that Donald Trump could, I think, if you're looking at the campaign, does he make inroads? That seems like one potential place.
And quickly, Anthony, if this debate is really influential for some young voters, if they tune in, what do you think will matter to them? Which issue will really matter if it comes up at the debate for young voters?
They tell us climate change because they think the environment has gotten worse, race and diversity issues, because it is the most diverse generation that America has yet seen. And those issues are really important to them beyond the others that we mentioned, Bob.
It's always great to blend reporting with analysis and data. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Anthony Salvanto, always excellent. Thank you so much.